Okay, so I think we should get started. Welcome, everyone. This is part two of of my series, Women Who Took the Leap. Allie Baker is with me today, all the way from LA, although she's originally from Philly. And yeah, I was inspired to do this so that we could all start thinking about new ways new different ways that we can take our lives right now since we're all stuck at home. So yeah, Allie Baker is a conscious copywriter, editor, and content strategist. And she just started this business like late last year, right?
Yeah.
So I was really inspired to bring her on because she's just done it. So I think she's going to be a really nice addition. And for a lot of us who are just starting, I think maybe you'll have some really great insights. You're just a little step ahead. So I think it'll be really cool to see how far you've come in so little time. So yeah, let's get right into it. So what prompted you to start your business?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Morgan. I'm so excited to be here. So what prompted me to start a business? I worked for other brands and magazines as a writer and editor for years. I was a magazine editor in New York, and then I worked for a brand called Tone It Up. And after I loved what I did everywhere I did it, but I just decided that it was time for me to try something on my own. I'd never been an entrepreneur. Never had my own business. I had this narrative in my head that I wasn't entrepreneurial for some reason. And I wanted to challenge that. And I wanted to be able to write for a lot of different brands and voices and people to kind of test my skills. And I wanted to be able to travel and write from anywhere. I was supposed to be in Bali right now, sadly, not happening. But the plan eventually is to be able to work from anywhere.
That's awesome. And so how did you kind of started your own business, I think November of last year, is that right?
Yeah.
So how did you build up to being able to quit your full-time job?
So I did it as a side hustle for about 6 to 7 months while I was still working my full-time job, and really built the foundation there. So I built my website, I built my offerings, I thought through all of that. I started to make connections, and then I had clients on the side while I worked full-time for about 6 months before I felt confident enough to make the leap. And I still wasn't sure that the timing was right. I honestly did it because the retreat in Costa Rica where we met came up. It just seemed like a sign that okay, this is the time to do it. So I left my job a week and a half before the retreat, and I used that as a reset to kind of move into full-time working for myself.
That's awesome. So how, during that 6 months of building up your clients, how did you meet most of those clients? Was it online? Was it in person?
A lot of it was through connections and word of mouth. So really just honestly, as soon as I started telling people just casually that I was thinking of doing this, clients came in and they would say oh, I have this friend, or oh, I know this person who might need that. So I didn't advertise or do anything online while I was doing it as a side hustle, because one, I still had a full-time job and that seemed weird. And two, I just wasn't quite ready, but I was starting to just tell friends, and through the people I told, one thing led to another, and I started to get more clients.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you really used word of mouth and just putting it out there.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. And then once I officially launched, I launched a website. I posted about it on social media, and I became more vocal about it. But really the biggest thing for me, honestly, even 6, 7 months in, is through clients referring me to other clients.
Okay. And what gave you the confidence to put it out there in the first place?
That's a good question. A lot of inner work, because I did have that imposter syndrome, and I did have that narrative that I wasn't entrepreneurial. So I really had to, did meditation, I did therapy, I really worked on it for a while. And then at some point I was just I just have to do it. And honestly, a lot of the confidence came from doing it. Once I actually put it out there, I felt so much more confident, and it just went from there.
That's an awesome lesson. Sometimes it's just a matter of telling people and then let the ball roll, that's awesome. Um, so in terms of starting your business, what has surprised you the most since you started?
I think the thing that surprised me the most was how naturally it flowed, because I had a lot of things holding me back from doing it, but once I did them, they were easier. Like, for example, small things that I thought were huge at the time, but are actually pretty small. Like, do I need an LLC? How do I pay taxes? How do I get health insurance? All of that stuff that seemed huge. Um, Now I'm sort of surprised that it's like not even an issue anymore. It was actually pretty easy, but it seemed so daunting. So what I did was I made a list of all of those like objections in my head where I couldn't do it. And I'm a Virgo, I'm a list person. I love that stuff. So I just went down the list and I was like, okay, I need to talk to an accountant. I'll talk to an accountant. Okay, I'll just research this. And then I would check things off the list. And then since I've done it, I'm surprised that it wasn't harder, honestly.
Yeah. That's a great practice. Just write everything down that scares you and go ahead and like start contacting people. When you were going down that list, how many of those people were like just friends that you called? Like, did you spend a lot of money on that list, or was it just like, yeah?
Most of them, like, I'm lucky my uncle's an accountant, so I just called him. I just did some internet research. And then the thing that I spent the most money on, that was the biggest investment, that was the smartest investment, was hiring someone to build my website and take photos of me for my website, because that was really holding me up. I was trying to build it myself. I just wasn't getting there. Didn't like any of the photos I had of myself. Mm-hmm. And when I made the investment to hire someone to build my website and hire a photographer who I found on a website called Barter and Bee, where I bartered for her services, then it just sort of like gave me a timeline. I was like, okay, I paid this person. I have to get everything together and I have to launch it. So that was like the biggest investment. But in terms of otherwise, it was just a lot of friends and family and my coworkers at Tone It Up who supported me and gave me advice.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's actually really refreshing to know. Like, so many people love to help. Entrepreneurs, like, I think it's a really untapped resource for a lot of people. It's like, look around, we have so many friends with so many skills, and that's awesome that your uncle is your accountant. My older brother's a lawyer, so like if there's ever a legal question, I'm like, what does this mean? That's great. So in terms of starting out, what's been like your biggest failure, or have you had any yet?
I've had a couple, like what I would call setbacks that I learned a lot from. The first one was figuring out how to price myself, which I am still always struggling with. Yeah. But like, for example, I had one brand that I really wanted to work with that reached out to me, and I was so excited about it. I really admired them. And I sent them a proposal and way priced myself out of it. And I was so upset with myself. But what I learned from that is, one, it's okay. It's better to come at it from an abundance perspective, and to know my worth. And number two, I just kind of changed the way that I operate in terms of pricing. So I have a discovery call with potential clients and see what they're looking for, their scope and their potential budget. And I put together a proposal based on that, so that still values my time, but takes into account their budget. And what that looks like, it's having like 3 different tiers of options of ways we can work together that are all priced differently. So that was one big one. And another big one was, at the beginning, I was taking everything that like came to me. So I had a lot of clients that said, like, we want you to do our PR and our partnerships outreach, and we want you to do our social media management and our visuals and all that. And I was just like, yes, I'll do it all, because I was afraid that if I said no, the next client would come. Mm-hmm. But I learned that I can do that stuff, but it's not where my passion lies. It's not what I'm best at. And it's better. I have friends like Stacy, who's on this call, who's amazing at that. And like, in the future, will refer those people to her or to other people in my network. So I'm spreading around the wealth and not spreading myself too thin.
Yeah. It's really refreshing. I know for me, I have literally the same issues, pricing and taking on things that aren't really my niche. And I think that that's such a common, both are really common issues. And it's really refreshing to hear that they are, like, other people have the same issues. I think entrepreneurs, like, we always feel like it's just us having the issue, but most things are really universal. So that's really cool. So I have a question because I obviously follow your social media, and you brand yourself as a conscious copywriter and editor. And I'm wondering what prompted you to put conscious in there.
That came through, I'd never thought of myself that way before I started working on branding my business. And I did an exercise where I wrote down who I wanted my clients to be and who I saw my clients as. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to stick with, I'd always worked in the wellness space, and I really wanted I wanted to work with mostly female focused brands who were conscious, who were wellness and spirituality focused. And I thought, okay, well, if that's my niche, I should put that out there and not be afraid to niche down, because at first I was like, is this too much? Like, am I, cutting out potential clients who are not like that? But then I was like, you know what? No, I'm calling in the clients that I want. And if another client comes in who is not a conscious female entrepreneur, that's fine too. But I want to put out who I want to work with.
Yeah. It's funny because it's one of the things that I really love about your branding, because it's like, oh, if your brand is coming from a conscious place, then the minute you see your branding, it's like, oh, this gal's gonna get me, and I think that's really cool. It's also like a great reason why niching is so important, actually. It's so your clients find you in the first place. So to get into other questions, what is the biggest mistake or mistakes that you see other entrepreneurs making as with their copyright and with their editing?
I think just trying to sound like someone that they're not, like super, super polished when they're not. I personally prefer really conversational copy that is like you're talking to a friend. Like one of the best pieces of advice I got was from my former boss. So one of my mentors, it's like, write it like you were talking to a friend, read it back. Does it sound like, would you ever say this? So I see like stiff copy a lot, or conversely, I see people that are going too far in the conversational and they're like, there's all emojis, all exclamation points, and that's fine if that's how you would normally speak. But if it's not, like, there's no need to go too far the other end. Mm-hmm. So it really, I honestly think there's no wrong way to do it. It's just the way that's natural to you. I have one client who's a modern mystic, who's very ethereal, and it's all like, hello, my queens, and all of that. So I write as her like that, and that's her voice. I have some that are very like, no BS, right to the point. But as long as it's what is natural to you, I think that will come through.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you get to know clients in a way that you can actually like write their voice for them? How does that come through for you?
That's the most interesting, sometimes difficult and fun part of my job. For new clients, I send them, and I sent this to you when we worked together, a strategic questionnaire that asks, and it's very similar to the exercise I did when I was starting my business, that who is your client? Describe them, describe your ideal day of working, describe your how you would describe your tone, and what's your mission, what's your why, all of those questions. And when I see it in the voice of my client, even if it's not, I just say like, spew it out there. Don't worry about how it sounds or whatever. So even if it's not polished, that's my job. I polish it, but reading it from them is really helpful. I'm lucky because a lot of my clients have podcasts, so I can just like listen to them speak all day and channel them like that. A lot of my clients, I would interview them. So I talk to them on the phone and I just tell them to like, okay, tell me everything about you. Tell me your vision, all of that stuff. And they just spew it all to me. And then I take it and polish it and brand it. But really the more that I can talk to my clients, the better, because just hearing them speak helps me get their voice.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay, so I like to ask everyone this, but when you were starting out, what is the one piece of advice you wish you could have heard from yourself?
Honestly, that it will be fine to go for it, to have more, to just be confident in yourself, and the fact that you haven't done it before doesn't mean that it's going to be impossible or that hard. So it wasn't really that long ago that I did it, but I would just like, even like me 6 months ago, I'd be like, just do it already. Just get it over with. You'll feel better once you do it.
That's awesome. So going into trends a little bit, because I think there's a lot of things changing about the way we're expressing ourselves, even now with social distancing and everything. Could you speak a little bit to like some of the trends you see coming with branding and copywriting?
In terms of just like marketing in general, what I'm doing for a lot of my clients now is like putting together courses and downloadables and all of that stuff. So obviously with social distancing, that's a huge trend. I see like in terms of language, people are pulling back a little bit on the like very, very effusive, very like babe, all that stuff, and being a little bit more measured with their language. But I also think we're swinging back where people are like, okay, we can't be like doom and gloom all the time. We don't know how long this is going to last. So I think the biggest things that I'm seeing is really brands just figuring it out as they go. And the ones that I work with that are being really successful are just really agile and nimble. Just like, okay, this is an opportunity for our brand. We're going to put out 6 digital courses in the next 2 months, which is like one of the brands that I'm working with. Just, you know, within a day, it was like, okay, here's how we're changing our roadmap, and put it into action. So that's been really exciting to watch.
That is, and in terms of like the difference between website copy and like social media copy, what can you say to that? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want your brand voice to be pretty consistent, but it's a little bit tweaked for each one. So like website copy, lives there typically longer. I think it should be a little bit more polished. I think like I'm a grammar nerd. So like for me, like your website copy, your grammar should be like, even if your copy is conversational, your grammar should be on point. Like for social captions, like it's fine if it's like I would be horrified if there was a your and a your or something really bad messed up. But like it's like using emojis as punctuation and like using a lot of exclamation points, using like a, you know, an RN for like a right now, and whatever feels more conversational to you has a place more in social, I think, than in like your sales page copy, which I think should be more polished.
Awesome. So I'm actually going to switch to taking questions because we have some already coming in. So thank you so much, Allie, for answering all my questions. I just want to say before we get into questions, I worked with Allie on some of my pages for my website. And it was really incredible because I'm not like copy is really not one of my strong suits at all. Like I can actually make a website design. It's funny, like even though it's not my background, like I found that one of the easier things for my business. But I think, I guess the thing I learned from that though is like the things that you're really not good at, like get someone in there to like help you with it, you know, and you kind of learn that with your website. It's like, sometimes just hire someone. It'll be faster. They'll do it cleaner. And, you know, you may be spending that extra money you have that month, but ultimately that's going to make the money back quickly, you know?
Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the questions that's come in is what kind of like magazines and brands have you worked with?
So I started at Family Circle magazine. I was their food and health assistant. That's how I fell into nutrition and fitness. Before that, I never exercised and ate cheeseburgers and Dunkin' Donuts, muffins every single day. And yeah, I just totally fell into that job and then kind of fell in love with it. And then from there, I went to Self magazine. I was the associate nutrition editor. So I was editing recipes. I still don't cook, but I can edit recipes. And then I worked at Food Network magazine, also sort of ironically. And then I was at Us Weekly for a while. And then I moved to LA to work for Tone It Up, which is a fitness and community for women. And then now I still work with Tone It Up. I work with almost 30 podcasts. I work with Natalia Benson, who's an astrologer and a modern mystic. And then I work with other like solopreneurs like you and Kate, who's on this call, and you know, a few other people like that.
Awesome. Thank you. And the next question is, I think I'm actually going to change this question a little bit, or I think I'm changing it, or maybe not. But why, what was it about your full-time job that wasn't fulfilling? And why did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
I was really lucky because I did love my full-time job. What I was missing from it was a kind of working with a diversity of clients, because at my previous job, I wrote as my bosses, like it's their voice, and which I do now for other clients, but it was just the same two people that I wrote as their voice for like 3.5 years. So I was just sort of craving a diversity of voices that I worked with. And as much as it was a very, like really, really fun company to work for, it was still like in an office, like 9 to, 6 or 7-ish. So I kind of just wanted to be able to set my own hours and work for myself. Yeah. But the biggest thing was just like, I was ready to challenge myself. Like I knew that I could write for that voice. Like it was like, I almost spoke in that voice. It was like the back of my hand. So I was like, I want to challenge myself and try some other voices. Yeah. And also to write for myself in my own voice, which is still something I'm working on, which is much harder to do for me than writing in other people's.
Interesting.
Which I find easy. Not easy, but like it's easier.
Do you want to speak a little bit to that, writing in your own voice and like learning that, learning how to do that?
Yeah, so that is something that I'm still working on. It's, for me, the problem is setting aside the time to do it when I spend all day writing for someone else. But for other people, I think it really just starts with like journaling and just getting it out there before you go back and polish it, and just doing like kind of just getting it out there, which I've been trying to do more of. And that's how you can sort of discover your own voice. You don't, at first pass, don't worry about polishing it. You can always go back later and do it, or hire someone like me to do it. But just kind of figuring out what words you use, which words you don't use. Like it's even small things. Like I have a client that only likes to open with the word hey, like hey so-and-so, because she thinks it's conversational. Another client that hates the word hey, thinks it's totally unprofessional, will never use it. So like really, really small things like that, you kind of figure out for yourself, what are words I like, what are words I don't like, how does my voice sound when I speak out loud. Even recording yourself speak, I think is helpful. So, but I totally get it if people have resistance to that, because I have resistance to it even in my, like for my own personal brand, I come up with resistance to that.
And when you're, and if this isn't ready to share, that's totally fine. But what are you looking to write more, like your own newsletters or blogs or books, or what are you thinking about going?
I'm still figuring out what the next move is, what the next avenue is. I'm not sure if it's a blog or if it's a newsletter series, or like eventually I'd like to do a course on how to, be a conscious copywriter and find your voice. But I'm still figuring it out. So like, I'm still in the very new stages of my business. My kind of game plan is to build up my client base with other, working with other brands and other people first. And then once I feel solid and confident in that, to move on to building my own personal brand. But it's something that I'm balancing and still working on.
Wonderful. Yeah. I can't wait to see what comes up. So the next question is, how are you managing your time when prioritizing different clients?
That is a really good question. Also still something that I am working on now. But I've been using time batching as much as I possibly can. So like, okay, I set aside 2 hours, just work for this client and turn my phone on do not disturb and just, okay, I can't move on until I get this done. Trying to keep them as separate as I can, because it's writing in a different voice. So I try not to go back and forth between clients. If I can, I like to set aside a whole day or at least a whole afternoon that's just for one client, but sometimes that's not possible. So if it's just like 2 hours and I set an alarm on my phone. And then just in terms of time management in general, I've just been trying to be really, really good about my routines in terms of like, I mean, everyone's working from home now, but now I always work from home since I went freelance. So I have like a non-negotiable morning routine where I work out and I meditate before I get to work. And at night, I don't work in my bed anymore, which I used to do all the time. So just trying to really keep a structure to the day like I would have if I was going to an office.
Yeah, I think that's like the big struggle of working from home. Everyone's feeling that right now. So the next question is, how do you keep a consistent schedule when you're working from home?
I mean, I had a really good schedule until like this all started, and then I had to readjust it a little bit. But what I do is just try to keep similar hours to when I was in the office. I wake up, I do my morning non-negotiables, work out, meditate, do like tea and wellness shots and all the tinctures and all that stuff. And then I will open my computer. I work in my living room, which is where I am now. I have a desk behind there. I will only work there, or sometimes on my front balcony if it's nice out. Like, I make my bed, leave my bedroom, shut the door, and do not go back until after 6. Sometimes later, but like until I'm done for the day. I just pretend like it's not there. And then at night, I try as much as I can to shut my computer. And if I have to work at night, I bring my computer back to my living room and don't work in my bedroom.
Yeah, that's good advice. I'm impressed you shut the door. Good for you.
I really think that's been really helpful, because I am like, it's not natural for me. I'm like a person that loves to like sit in bed, work in bed, eat in bed. If I didn't make myself not do it, I would do it all day.
So how many hours do you work daily?
I try to keep it to like a 9 to 5-ish schedule, but it's kind of like it goes in and out. Like sometimes it'll be less, sometimes it'll be more, but I try to keep it to like 9:30 to like 6-ish.
Yeah. And so you did say you're using batch scheduling?
Yeah, like time batching scheduling as much as I can. Yeah.
Yeah. So any more questions, anything, especially about copy or writing or maybe finding your voice? You're welcome to unmute yourself, by the way, or you can write in the chat box, whichever you prefer. I have one question about finding your voice. For me, I find that sometimes I write too conversationally, like, I write as I speak, but when I'm reading it later, it doesn't come off like really great. So I'm wondering, like, do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you're doing the right thing. The first step is to just get it out there. And then when you go back, I would just look at it like sentence by sentence and say like, okay, is this what I meant to get across? And if I didn't, just try to rewrite that sentence. I think it's overwhelming when someone will write like, you'll write an entire paragraph or an entire page, and then you read it back and you're like, this is not what I wanted to say or sound like. It's like, okay, no, that's scary. But if you take it sentence by sentence and smooth it out that way, I find that is really, really helpful. I would also just really encourage you to send it to someone, like even if it's just a friend that's not a professional. A lot of times they see things that you don't see. And I do this for everything. Like, I'm a professional, but I send my copy to friends. When I worked at Tone It Up, we always sent it to each other. And I was typically the last pair of eyes on it, but even then I would like to send it to at least 2 people before I did anything with it. So I think that's huge. Just like, even if you're like, well, my friend's like not a professional, but it's fine, because they'll like see something. They'll be like, they'll read something differently than how you intended it sometimes. And you're like, oh, I would have never like wanted to say that, but it's nice. Or they'll give you encouragement. You thought something was like not what you wanted to say, but they're like, okay, this totally speaks to me. So it goes both ways.
Yeah. And when you were doing the copy for your own website, how did that feel? Was that different for you, or did you hire someone else to do it? How did that work?
No, I did it myself. And that part was, I had a little resistance to doing it at first, which is part of the reason it took me a long time to get my website. But once I, like I said, invested in the designer, she was like, okay, I need your copy by such and such day. And that really like put a fire under me. And I was like, okay, great. And then once I actually got into it, it felt okay. Like, it was, I do have resistance writing about myself because sometimes it feels like bragging or it feels weird. But that's where a lot of the inner work about overcoming imposter syndrome has come in. And then if I have those little voices, I just remind myself, no, these are your accomplishments. This is what you do. It's fine to put it out there. And then once I kind of gave myself that permission and had the timeline, it flowed pretty easily. But for some people it doesn't, and that's fine. And a lot of my clients, that's what I do for them, is I write their website copy, because for a lot of different reasons. Some of them are great writers. They just don't have the time to do it. Some of them have a very, very clear vision, but just don't love the actual writing part, which is fine too. And some don't have that clear of a vision, and we work together to cultivate their vision. So it really it kind of goes across the spectrum for people I work with, and you don't need to be like, okay, you don't need to check a certain box to be like, okay, this is why I need to work with a copywriter.
You said something you were talking about imposter syndrome. I don't think you're alone. I think there's many people who have that to some degree, especially when they're starting out. So could you give any advice to that? What is your advice? What did you do to, get yourself through that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's still something that when you asked me to do this, I was like, wait, why me? I just started but so it still comes up. But what I do is I try to think I'm judging, that's a judgment that comes from myself. If I take myself away from it and look at myself from the outside, okay, here are the things that I've accomplished. That is pretty great. I should be proud of myself. And I just sort of have to step back and kind of look at myself from the outside, and that helps me. And also just I don't know, affirmations, I'm worth it. I'm doing it today. I am going to be confident. I'm going to be great in this workshop. So just little practices like that really help.
Yeah. It's funny. You're saying, workshop. When Allie was posting about this, she wrote digital workshop, and I was like, gosh, that is a great way to say it. Instead of webinar series, I was like, oh my God, I should steal that. And I don't know, is there any reason why you were saying digital workshop? Are those words really hot right now?
You know what? I didn't do it consciously, actually, so I'm sorry that I accidentally rebranded.
It's okay. I was like, she rebranded this, but it's way better.
I think it's because I think it's because I have in my head, I'm working, like I said, I work with almost 30 podcasts, and they're doing a ton of digital workshops right now, and I'm writing the copy and the promotion for it. So I think I have it in my head, but I do think it is a really hot word right now, because almost all of my clients are doing digital workshops right now.
Awesome.
I think you're right in the vein of what everyone's doing.
That's awesome. Okay, so I think, do other people have questions, or by the way, thank you for answering a bunch of my questions that came up. Any other questions? You can unmute yourself, Stacey.
I have a question. So what has been the most fulfilling part of taking the leap for you?
Good question. I think it has been seeing working with different clients and kind of seeing my value, well, first for myself, but also with other people, because I'm so used to like I said, working with one client, and I was like, okay, I know that I'm good at working with them, but I wasn't sure, honestly, that I was like, okay, can I translate this skill to a lot of different people? And seeing it and working with a lot of different people and building my confidence that way has been really, really fulfilling. And also slowly learning that the confidence doesn't come from any particular client, whoever it is, that it really has to start with me. And I think that's been really fulfilling.
That's awesome. It does have to, it's so true. It has to start from us. And once we start doing that inner work, it comes through. It's so cool. Great question, by the way. Other things, because I do want to get into, is anyone want to ask Allie advice about your particular copy, or maybe your mission statement? We'd put that out there if anyone came with anything. If the answer is no, it's fine, because I'm going to have her do mine, which is great for me. But honestly, it doesn't have to be that. If someone else wants to put their mission statement in the chat, she's going to give advice, maybe rework some things. So yeah.
I have another question. So this is not my personal mission statement, but I had a girlfriend call me about this yesterday, actually, and I kind of was like, not completely sure how to answer it, but she was talking about like a yoga business and the name for it. And then she was like, well, what exact, she's like, you know, it wasn't her name, you know, her first and last name or anything like that. But she was like, what if I'm giving the impression that this name means this? Or what if I'm giving the impression that this seems too crazy or wild, or like, and she just was like toying with like a couple of different names of like what to call this business. And obviously that's a huge thing, but I kind of was like, I don't really know what to tell. I didn't really know what to tell her. Like, what would you tell a friend if they were calling you saying that?
I think, first of all, like naming a business is a lot of pressure. So kind of like taking the pressure off of it to start and starting from a creative place. So just like you would do, like put out a candle, relax, and like just journal out like whatever words come to mind, whatever word combinations, whatever, like, and like over a few days, just like let it sit, then come back to it and look at like, okay, what 3 days later after I haven't looked at this, like still stands out. And then narrow it down to like a few favorites. And then I think like go to friends and say like, okay, these are the thing, like this is the name I'm thinking. This is the, or the couple names, like what stands out to you and what do you think when I say this? Cause some people like she worried about might have reaction, like might misinterpret it in a way that they didn't want, or misinterpret it in like an interesting, cool way. So put that out there and then sit with it again. I would just say like not, you know, rush to name it and not feel a lot of pressure, because it is like, it's a big decision, but also like it comes with time being comfortable with your name. Like even like Almost 30 wrote this in one of their books about naming their podcast. Like they didn't feel like totally confident in the name until a year after they launched. So also I wouldn't let like the name hold you back from starting.
Yeah.
And also just like small things, making sure the URL is not taken, making sure the Instagram handle is not taken, making sure there's no other business that has very similar name to it. Like just doing like your due diligence on searches.
Cool. Thank you. I'll call her back and tell her those things.
Other questions or copy that anyone wants to share?
Want to do yours, Morgan?
Yes. Oh my God, let's do it. Rip it to pieces, please. Okay, so the first thing you see when you hit my website, I think this is very cliche. And you can tell me what, actually, I should just read it and we'll let you tell me. So it says, I'm here to help you dream big and make those dreams your reality.
I think it's not cliche. It's like people do use that a lot. So I think you want to start with something even that's more specific to you, and like how you make their dreams a reality. Something that feels more. Sorry, is my phone beeping? That is that's one of my old bosses. Oh, she sends 6 checks in a row. One of my clients. So anyway, Stacey knows what I'm talking about. So sorry to get off track, but I think you want to be as specific as possible. So like through life, like, you know, what you do, that you're a life coach, that you like the people you work with, as much as you can work those words into the beginning of your copy, I would. So like for you, you're focusing right now on, well, at least for your like next step course, like making like helping people find direction, helping people find the next step in their finding their passion and their confidence. So I would try to work in more of those specific words, because I think as specific as you can get, the better.
Yeah, dreams is like very broad, right? Like that's how I feel about that term dream. Okay. So get specific and talk more about your clients.
Exactly.
Yeah, like what do you offer?
Specifically who you are and who you want to work with, which is hard to do in like the first sentence, because if you want something catchy, I get that. But then as quickly as you can get into your specific niche, I think the better. And I think that, like, on your homepage, even, you don't need a ton of copy, because you want to just say like who you are, and then maybe some bullet points of what you do, and then go to like the next pages. Like, I think the best ones are ones that like have different, that are broken out in sections, have like a couple lines of copy and like a photograph or something really engaging, and then has a button that goes to another page to tell you more. Because and a really strong like CTA button, like a call to action button, is really important. So like, you know, work with me, get the offerings, connect with me, things that are like, as opposed to like learn more, which is fine, but it just doesn't grab you as much.
Mm. And how do you decide those? Can you give us some advice about call to action? What would you tell entrepreneurs about that?
I think your call to action is one of the like most important copy that you can have. It's a balance, because you want it to be fun and engaging. So like sometimes like you want it to be like kind of punny and funny, but like you also want it to be like pretty direct. So I would say err on the side of more direct than like more cutesy or more voicey, because you just want people to know, like, click here to get this, especially if it's a sales page. Like, click here to enroll. There's limited spots available. Click here to get the last 5 spots. Like, just, you know, you really want people to click on it. So I would just be really specific and direct with CTA buttons, and you can use more conversational and fun language above them.
And you were mentioning like sales pages. What are some of the ways to craft those? By the way, I know this is a really packed question. What are the ways like you can make those stronger without getting really salesy?
Yeah, that is a really, really good question. I hear a lot of resistance of people not wanting to, like, quote unquote sell themselves, but that's where like your voice and your authentic story comes in. So sales pages don't have to feel so salesy if you explain who you are and the why of what you're doing. So for example, if it's a course, it's like, I want to hear why you created this course and why you were the person to teach it, like what experience you have. And I want you to speak directly to me. Like, I want you to say, have you felt stuck in this? Have you felt, and like, I want to hear language that I'm like, oh yeah, I have. Like, oh yeah, that's me. And if you craft copy like that, it will not come off as salesy. And it's fine to be salesy because you're selling something, but you are selling more than just a product or service. You're selling your expertise. You're selling who you are. And if that comes through, then it comes across more genuine. So yeah, like, there are a lot of life coaches out there, but you have a very specific experience. You have a specific voice, and people relate to you, which is why people are on this call. So like that, you just want to get to the heart of that. Or like, if it's a product, like, you know, we sold protein at my last company. There's a million people that sell protein, but people bought our protein because they liked our story and the content that we put out there. And I also, for sales, I think it's helpful to put out free content first, or to go with it, or as a bonus, so people get a sense of, one, what they're getting, and so people trust you and feel connected to you. So like, okay, here's a paid course, but to funnel you into it, here is a free downloadable PDF that has like 5 top level things. So that's really, I think it's nice to give away as much free stuff as you can before you funnel people into paid stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I think, does anyone else have anything they want to bring up for Allie? Any other questions about copy? If not, I'll end off here. Allie, what are you offering, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so I offer really working any kind of copy that people could want. So I do, like I mentioned, sales pages, website copy, social captions, ebooks, blog posts, newsletters. I do one-on-one consultations to build your brand and your brand voice, but really anything that can have to do with copy. When I also do some production stuff. So if you're interested in producing a photo or video shoot, I can write your scripts and set up your run of shows and do all of that stuff. So really anything in the content realm. And you can find me on my website, which is allielbaker.com, ALLIELbaker.com, and on Instagram at AllieLBaker.
Great. And I'm going to follow up on an email to everyone with all that information, so you'll have it. Oh, thank you, everyone. There's so many nice comments coming up. Thanks, guys. That's really nice. I really love chatting with you, Allie. And these are also such like great piece of advice. And I think also copy is like, can be really daunting for a lot of people. So I think you bring it down to earth and make it a little just more fresh, you know? So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is so great.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. And I just want to remind everyone that I'm going to be doing these 3 more times this month. Next week, I have Jenny Misa coming on. She's a finance expert who coaches women specifically on their finances, and she's awesome. She has so many great tips, especially for entrepreneurs going out there, especially if you have debt. I highly recommend you come. She's going to be offering some really great stuff. So thank you again, Allie, and everyone. If you want to contact me about life coaching, I also have a course coming out next month called The Next Step, like how to, like Allie was explaining it, but you know, how to create like your next step in life. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Stacy. It was so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Allie, that was awesome.